Welcome to the Equity Teacher Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rachael Mahmood. In this podcast, we'll dive into the stories, the voices, and the expertise of incredible teacher leaders who are making a difference through the equity work they do in their classrooms and their communities. Welcome to another episode of Equity Teacher Leader. Today, we are talking with Victor Gomez, the 2025 Illinois Teacher of the Year. Yes, Victor, I'm ready to hand the baton to you. So for those of you that have been listening along to the podcast, we have been highlighting teachers all across Illinois, teacher leaders that are focused on equity. You will see after this podcast that Victor is 100% an equity teacher leader. Okay, Victor, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you work, what you teach, how long you've been in education?
Of course. This is going on to be my 7th year in education. I am a bilingual science educator at Leiden District 212 in the suburbs of Chicago. I'm just really excited with this really important work to advocate for bilingual STEM education.
Yeah, definitely. When I heard your speech at the banquet, I just felt incredibly inspired. That moment, when you got up there and you're standing in front of all those educators and sharing your words, your message. How did you feel post banquet, post all the fun and fanfare that night?
Well, can I say I felt really nervous? I was like, there's a whole new
Yeah.
experience outside of the classroom waiting for me for this year. But I just think that having a platform to advocate for something I think that's very important is just so important. And I'm just really excited to do the work and to really connect with other school districts and universities in order to help them develop bilingual curriculum and help them with anything they need in order to support not only the prospective bilingual teachers, but current bilingual STEM teachers, as well as how to support their students in the classroom.
Definitely such an important message. I worked in a school for the last 10 years where we had bilingual at every grade level from kindergarten to 5th grade, and just so beautiful to see how having a bilingual program in our elementary school just enriched our entire school experience and enriched our school, and not just the experiences of the students that were in the bilingual program, but also the students that got to go to school alongside students that were developing their multilingual superpowers, I like to say, in the elementary world. I love how in your speech you seamlessly integrated Spanish and English, and it was just really beautiful. It was just a beautiful nod to being multilingual and what that means. I'm assuming you grew up bilingual, but you tell us more. What was your journey with language like as you're young till now?
Definitely, bilingualism is truly an asset, and when you grow up in a bilingual household, often you learn one language first, which is the language you have at home. So my first language was Espanol. I first learned how to speak and navigate the world of my Spanish language and identity. And once I went to school, I had the honor of starting my first schooling experience in a dual language classroom with Miss Valenzuela at kindergarten, which was really, really cool. So being able to learn how to navigate between Spanish and English in the schooling environment was really important for someone who is bilingual, and not everyone has that opportunity, right? So some people learn Spanish at home and then it's English only in school to start off with. Unfortunately, what I thought would continue throughout my entire educational journey stopped right there. Like,
Oh, wow.
after that, I wasn't in a dual language classroom anymore. It was only English only classrooms from there on out.
Was that because it wasn't offered, or how did that happen?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they put me in a multilingual language classroom at first, and then they may not have had those resources or teachers later on. I'm not entirely sure how that worked out, but what I found later was that not only was my Spanish language not being represented in the classroom after kindergarten, is that I didn't see it represented in those who taught me for like 15 years, not until I got to Elmhurst University and purposefully took a Spanish literature class and another science class in which the professor was of Latino heritage. So it took 15 years to really find that linguistic support and that example in those teaching those classes. I felt invisible for a while. Yeah, I had a lot of peers who were bilingual and we interacted with each other, but it really wasn't represented in our teachers in the classroom environment. Definitely in the lunchroom, right? Because we would do our code switching with each other there, but it would have been nice to have it part of the curriculum, to have it part of, especially in STEM, that's where it really was absent. So that's something that encouraged me in order to become a bilingual STEM educator is to not only uh, be someone that the students could relate to, bilingual students, but also show them that the language is just as important as the science that we're teaching them.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so another question I had was if you were in the bilingual or dual language program in kindergarten and then you didn't re-enter again until college, how did you learn to read and write in Spanish? Or what was that journey like?
That I don't necessarily know how I learned to read and write in Spanish. I think it just was exposure at home to watching telenovelas and watching Spanish TV, the noticias, the news, and programs like Chavo del Ocho and La Rosa de Guadalupe and things like that for the listening and continuously practicing comprehension of Spanish as well as interacting with my family members. The reading and writing came from my own initiative to read books in Spanish when I was a little kid. My parents, obviously, they had books in English and books in Spanish, and I would take the initiative to read both because I knew that one day I would need to know how to read Spanish as well as write it. I think where I really learned to write it was once I got into college. So I took the Spanish level classes in college, got a Spanish minor. I wish I would have taken it in high school, but I ended up taking Italian because I was like, oh, I already know Spanish.
Well, and that's another interesting thing. I interviewed Mike Ayala, who was, I think, the 2023 Cook County Co-Regional Teacher of the Year, and he started a Spanish for Heritage Speakers course because kids who spoke Spanish would have to take Spanish 1, which didn't make sense because it wasn't a foreign language for them. And so they didn't have a place where they could take their bilingual, maybe oral skills and translate them to reading and writing skills because they weren't really a fit for foreign language. And at the same time, they didn't have a Spanish for Heritage Speakers course.
I think those
So,
classes are really cool because if you're not in the multilingual learner programs at the school,
mhm.
right? That space is really important because they're bringing in other Latino students that you can interact with your bilingualism. And so you have a shared identity and a shared like experience, right? Because a lot of us who are born in the United States and don't necessarily take those heritage learner classes until we get to high school, we don't get that kind of experience to be in a classroom with people who have similar experiences as us. So I think I would have loved to take that. My wife took one of those classes in high school. She said she absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I could see that. And really, it just shows the students that are in these courses that their language is a superpower, that it adds to their identity, not takes away from their school experiences. It enriches them as a student. So, again, really powerful, not only lessons for students, but also lessons about their own identity and like affirming messages that we send them through having courses like that. Okay, so you're using a lot of terms. We know I multilingual, bilingual, ESL, ELL, EL. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of terms out there when talking about students. Dual language, you talked about. Can you help us just pick apart some of these terms? What is the difference between being a bilingual teacher and being an ESL teacher? And is that different than being an EL teacher, an ELL teacher, an ESL teacher?
Well, ESL is English as a second language, is describing the course. ELL is the English language learner, students who are in those classes. We are navigating to more additive ways of identifying the students in those programs. So one thing at Enlighten that we changed is we moved away from saying ESL or ELL and saying multilingual learner program. And our students are multilingual learners because the goal is not just to develop their English language proficiency. Yes, we want them to learn English, but we don't want them to lose that linguistic identity that they have, right? We want that to be celebrated. So we're moving to multilingual learner. Bilingual is when we have courses that are taught by teachers who are going to teach in the students' home language primarily and move into bridging it into the English language development. So but using their first language as an asset to do that and helping them navigate between the two worlds, right? In the multilingual learner classes, the ESL traditional classes, are the ones where we are instructing in English, but using their language supports to help them reach English language proficiency. But now at the same time, making sure that they feel valued and honored in their linguistic abilities.
That it's asset based, right? It's
Yes.
like saying we're not just trying to push you towards like that assimilation into the English speaking world without honoring the fact that you come from a rich language, have rich language skills already. I
And I
like
think
that.
it's at some point in history, we were
Mhm.
using the limited English proficient as an identifier for students, and
Mm,
they're continuously moving away from things that are um, what are called deficit mindset.
right.
How do we identify our students, right? We want them to feel proud of their linguistic heritage.
I love that. So you teach chemistry, and you're not the first chemistry teacher I've had on the podcast, because I also had Bryn Zingrebe on the podcast, and she's the 2024 Outstanding Early Career Educator. It's a really long title. And she teaches ESL chemistry to students that are in not, I guess, ESL program. We shouldn't say that anymore. So she teaches chemistry to multilingual learners or a high population of multilingual learners. And she talked about some of the strategies she uses to teach chemistry with multilingual learners. And that was one of the episodes that we had. Don't remember what number it was, but just some of those strategies of bringing that complex scientific tier two vocabulary, making sure it's accessible to all students. What does a bilingual chemistry class look like? How is that different than a chemistry class that's geared towards multilingual learners? Or tell us a little bit about how that, or even how that came about. Because didn't you start the bilingual chemistry program at your school at Leiden?
We did start it. Well, essentially, we started the true bilingual program with some colleagues and an administrator who were interested in making sure that our newcomer students had a space to take high level courses, right? Because oftentimes we find that our newcomer students are coming in with such rich funds of knowledge and already a lot of experience in taking science classes. A lot of them taking physics, chemistry, biology before they even get to high school, the high school level over there in Latin American
In
countries.
their home countries.
Yeah, and what often happens is because of language barriers, quote unquote, they get placed into classes that don't have like the rigor in the scientific content because they're not yet at level with the English language development.
Mm,
So what you want to do is you want to bring in a teacher who speaks their native language so that you can give them those opportunities to take those higher level science classes. So along with Dr. Diana Bonilla and one of our administrators who was the multilingual learner department chair at the time, we advocated and proposed the beginning of some science classes in Spanish to make them bilingual courses. And it got approved and we piloted the class. I piloted that first course, had no idea what I was doing at first. But through a lot of trial and error and doing a lot of research, taking courses on bilingual methods, things like that, right? Just learning how to do a biliteracy unit framework in order to learn how to teach bridging, so that when to switch between Spanish and English, and just really having to relearn Spanish, like content level Spanish
right.
was so daunting. And because I went through that where I was like, how I know Spanish, like social Spanish, but how am I going to develop this content Spanish, right? But since like we've already been through school and we've learned a couple of those tricks, I use those to help the students learn. I was like, hey, if I use this, then the students might benefit from this. As you know, in science, it has a lot of Latin origins, so that we have the shortcut and that little superpower in our that the words in English and in Spanish kind of sound similar because they have Latin roots
Right.
in Spanish and English. So we use a lot of cognates in order to bridge languages. So that's something that really helped the students learn the science.
No, that makes sense. And that tier two vocabulary, it's tough for everyone. Even if you are an English speaker, the tier two vocabulary of being tier two, tier three vocabulary, um, and a language you're already familiar with is tough. So I like how you talked about bridging, and the switching back and forth, and some of those strategies. What does a day look like, or what does like a course look like? If I came into your bilingual chemistry class, like what would that look like? What would I see there? What would you be doing with your students?
Well, every day the students love that they get greeted with music, whether it's the newest salsa like
Oh,
song that's out or
yeah.
anything like that, just to encourage them to come into the classroom. And then when they come in, usually do like bell ringers, like classic stuff like that,
Hmm.
which includes any linguistic bridging or front loading vocabulary or readdressing a topic that we learned about the previous day. And then depending on the lesson, right, it can be a collaborative one where we do a lab experiment.
Hmm.
The instructions are in both languages, so they can navigate between them. If it's a day of like a direct instruction, I take time to teach them the content in Spanish, and then at the end we usually do a small mini bridging lesson in order to show them, okay, this is how the vocabulary is in Spanish, and this is how we would translate it to English. And then the next day we can do something where now they use the, the English language in order to describe the same phenomenon. So it's like the same concept but described in both languages.
No, I
It
like
just,
that.
it just really
Pairs
depends.
it together. Is that what bridging is? I feel like that's a term I probably should know better, since I do hear a lot of my colleagues who are bilingual educators talk a lot about bridging. Is that what it is? Like putting the two languages together, or what does
Yeah,
that look like?
using their linguistic resources in their native language as a bridge to learn the English language.
Like a scaffold almost. Like,
Accountants. Yes. We
okay.
want to see that their first language is an asset to learning English, not a deficit, not a burden, not a hurdle, not something that they have to put away and then learn English without using their linguistic repertoire.
Right up my alley on the asset based, way that we can educate students. All right. So you got this course started, the bilingual chemistry course, bilingual science courses. What would be your advice to schools or school districts or administrators that are listening to this podcast, or even teachers that are like, hey, Victor, I'm with you. Like, we need this in our high school. How would they go about to get a bilingual STEM program going, or bilingual advanced science courses, or any really advanced courses in their high school in their students' native languages?
Well, if you have a newcomer population, then you have to provide them with a bilingual course. Then the next step is to see who your teachers are. Do you have teachers who are bilingual? If they are, do they have the bilingual endorsement? If they don't have a bilingual endorsement, then there's a temporary bilingual endorsement. It's called a transitional bilingual endorsement, where
Mhm.
they're able to teach bilingual classes, not multilingual language classes, at least in the high school level, right? Just bilingual classes, uh, while they work towards getting that endorsement. Okay, if you don't have the teachers to teach the bilingual courses, then you have to go out there and find bilingual teachers for social studies, for science, for mathematics, which is hard, right? Because there's a huge deficit of bilingual educators, especially in STEM, and not only in Illinois, but in the entire country. I would say just really making sure that they're advocating for these programs and then making connections with universities in order to find uh, those teachers who are bilingual, who can fill that niche and provide that support for the students that you have in your school community.
It's almost
Harder
like
said than done.
universities. Yeah, I was going to say, sounds
Harder.
like we need to really partner with our university. I know you've partnered with Elmhurst University. We're both Elmhurst alum. I probably should have started with that somewhere at the beginning, being Elmhurst alum with you. But how has that partnership looked with Elmhurst University? If a school's like, you know what, that's a great idea. We're going to partner with some universities in our area. How did you get that started?
Well, I got asked to go and do the STEMtastic showcase, and I
Hmm.
said I want to talk about my experience as being a bilingual chemistry teacher. And from there, we got people coming in. They showed interest and like, oh, okay, bilingual science education, bilingual STEM education, it's important. And then they have something called the Noise Scholarship Program at Elmhurst University. And so they have prospective educators who are working towards getting bilingually endorsed, and they're diverse and they want to go into schools to serve diverse learners, right? And so we myself and other teachers from Leiden who were also bilingual took it upon ourselves to mentor a couple of those teachers from Elmhurst University. And last semester I had a student teacher, and she is now employed at Leiden. Just making those connections.
There we go. Yes, use
This
those
year,
resources.
what I'm really trying to do is connect with as many universities as I can and whatever bilingual programs I have, so that we can make a network, so that we can hopefully get more prospective bilingual educators into the districts that need them.
That's great. So that's your message this year as Teacher of the Year. It is to, sorry, you go. Ready? Your message as Teacher of the Year this year is to
Reduce that deficit in bilingual education and make sure that school districts and students and teachers all understand that bilingualism is an asset and something that needs to be celebrated and integrated into our curriculums to serve that community of multilingual learners wherever they may be in our schools.
Yeah. Do you have any strategies for teachers that are not bilingual, but, are servicing students that are multilingual in our classrooms? Any suggestions you could give us, the well-intentioned monolingual teachers that want to create environments where our students feel comfortable in their, bilingual identities?
Yeah, leverage their cultural and linguistic experiences, and don't be afraid to integrate them into curriculum, right? If you collect any interest inventories and you learn something about a student, ask them about it, and then just allow the students to be that vehicle that centers your curriculum. I know that's really difficult, right? Especially once you already have like a set curriculum, but really try to integrate it in a way that's thoughtful and that is respectful of who they are culturally and linguistically. For example, one of the things we did with my student teacher is that she's from Peruvian descent. So uh, we were learning about gas laws, and in biology, we were learning about human adaptations with genes and stuff like that, right? So what she did was she connected both classes, because the students who start in biology are going to move on to chemistry, right? And she pretty much showed them, hey, for my Peruvian ancestry, when we went to Peru, my dad's Cuban, but me, my brother, and my mom, we went to Machu Picchu and we didn't get altitude sickness. And they're like, but my dad did, right? And so she had some students who were also Peruvian or who had experiences living at high altitudes, and they were brainstorming on why that could have been. In chemistry, we brought that back up, relating the gas laws to understand the atmospheric conditions of high elevations. So it was just really cool that she brought in her experiences, modeled that, and then students had all these questions and their own experiences. And from there, we were able to explore their curiosities and their experiences, tying them back into science, which is really cool. I think one of the experiences was in like Mexico City, that there were times when he couldn't go to school because the air quality was so bad. So then the next unit that we had was on chemical reactions. We looked at what are chemical pollutants, how do we identify them, and why is it that Juan couldn't go to school on certain days.
I love that. And I love how you just like brought the students' experiences right into the lesson. So meaningful. This year, the school that I'm teaching in, I have a lot of multilingual students. They're not all part of an ML program, and we don't have a bilingual program at the school. Many of my students speak Telugu, Hindi, and other Indian dialects, Urdu. And so I've been thinking about how I'm going to create an environment where they can share their languages as well, and I can learn the languages with them. And I am sad to say that my dad's fluent in Telugu, and that's the language that most of my students are going to speak. And like my knowledge of it is very less. So I'm really excited to learn with my students this year, even my own language that I should have a better grasp on. But I love those strategies. Those are really good ways to incorporate students to lessons. Very similar to something Josh Lerner talked about on the last podcast I just posted. He went to Columbia as a Fulbright scholar and studied how the Colombian schools are absorbing and welcoming and supporting the Venezuelan students who are coming in as refugees and migrant students. in order to learn how to better support Colombian and Venezuelan newcomers that are coming to his school in Chicago. And he shared lessons and ideas in podcast 14 of Equity Teacher Leader. So you're going to want to check that out. The listeners are going to want to check that out as well, because he also talked about integrating their family life experiences, like the load shedding and the power outages in Venezuela, and connecting it to elementary electricity units. And so very exciting stuff. You all have a lot in common. So I definitely want to, before we end the podcast, I want to just ask about your Teacher of the year. Some people might listen to this podcast and want to know more about how you plan on spending the year, what you plan on doing, because they might be interested in reaching out to you and using your expertise and inspiration as a resource in their school or in their district. So tell us a little bit about that before we wrap up. And then I will definitely drop your booking link into the show notes. So if somebody wanted to reach out and book you for an event, that they would be able to do that as well.
Most definitely. Well, I do have the keynote speech, which talks about the journey of a monarch butterfly, talking about our migration stories and how it came to be that bilingualism became an asset in my life, from my parents' story to my story, to my mentor's story, to my mentee story, to our students' stories. And to have that, and then outside of that, I'm creating this initiative called Monarcas, and it's an affinity group for multilingual learner and bilingual STEM educators to come together and share resources and experiences, and just to have that network connection. Because oftentimes, as a bilingual educator at a district, you often feel alone because there's not many of us.
Yeah.
So just being able to connect all around the state would be such a cool opportunity to do that.
And sharing resources. Yeah.
So if anyone is interested on that, and you can always reach out to me or Dr. Mahmood, and we can add you to that initiative. It's going to kick off in October.
Oh, that's great.
I've been working with a couple universities already and a couple people on how to start that, how that looks like. But once it kicks off, hopefully we're going to be able to support one another for years to come.
That's so amazing. And I know you're speaking at some universities as well and continuing to inspire our next generation of bilingual STEM educators. These are great things. All right. So, 7 years in, and you have been not only just doing your job, but like leading in this space, leading with heart, leading with passion. Just what is something that continues to inspire you to keep on teaching, to keep on leading, to keep on refocusing your efforts on creating these equitable educational outcomes for all students and staff? I like to end with just a little piece of inspiration. If people have made it this far in the podcast, leave them with a little bit of inspiration of, what inspires you, so that maybe that could also help fill up their bucket of inspiration as well.
Our students are the heart of everything we do, right? So I'd say the greatest inspiration in continuing this work is just seeing how our students fall in love with being part of a community of learners and having an educator who really uplifts their linguistic and cultural heritage within that space. I think it's important to have that community built in the classroom. And once you have that, it becomes more than just a classroom. It transforms into, I don't even know how to describe it, una familia, like a family.
Yeah. No, that's definitely so true. I always tell my students, I love you unconditionally, from the moment you walk into my classroom, you are part of, I call it the 5M family, because fifth grade Mahmood, just so that they knew from the moment they walked in that they're it. They're going to, and not only that this year you're going to love them, but you're going to unconditionally care about them and support them for a lifetime, right? They can always come back and be like, Mr. Yeah. So definitely. So yeah. So it's been an honor to talk to you today, Victor. We are super excited to see all the amazing things you're going to do this year as the 2025 Illinois Teacher of the Year. You are in for an amazing year. I can say that off of personal experience, that you are going to meet so many amazing people, educators. Your bucket is going to be so full. It's going to be runneth over of all the passion, all the love that educators bring every day to their classroom. And I know that they're going to be so incredibly lucky to hear your story, the Monarch story, to learn in community with you. You are 100% an equity teacher leader. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us on the Equity Teacher Leader podcast, and for all the work and all the service you're going to be doing this year to the great educators of Illinois.
Thank you for having me on. It's an honor.